It's the 25th of November 2020 and I'm walking along Douglas High Street on the Isle of Man. There's no face masks to be seen, no social distancing, no queues outside of shops, because by and large we don't really have the coronavirus here. But just how exactly did the Isle of Man turn into a COVID-free paradise? The first known case of the coronavirus can be traced back as far as November 2019, when a 55-year-old man in the Hubei province of China was apparently recorded as having caught it. On the 4th of January 2020, the World Health Organization reported on social media that there was a cluster of pneumonia cases, with no deaths, in Wuhan, also in Hubei province. On the 13th of January, the first case outside of China was confirmed in Thailand, and at the end of the month, the total number of cases worldwide stood at only 7,818, with the majority of cases in China and only 82 cases reported in 18 other countries. Over on the Isle of Man, the government takes one look at its limited healthcare resources and decides to start putting a plan in place just in case. The first 2 cases of coronavirus in the United Kingdom are confirmed on the 31st of January, with more cases popping up throughout February. On the Isle of Man, life is still normal at this point, and most people probably hope it will all blow over and not affect the island. The government, however, is already starting to act and brings in emergency legislation in line with the UK. This step will prove crucial in the coming weeks and months. The hope for a corona-free island is destroyed on the 19th of March, when the first case of the China virus is officially confirmed on Manx shores. The way the Isle of Man now managed to practically defeat the virus largely comes down to 2 factors. 1. The geographical location of the island in the middle of the Irish Sea, a safe distance away from the UK, Ireland and any other countries. And 2. Quick and decisive action taken by local politicians to ensure the virus cannot wreak havoc on the island. No sooner had the first case on the island been confirmed that the government decided to close the island's borders. With only one small airport and one single ferry company handling all passenger traffic on the Irish Sea, this was a relatively easy step to carry out. We basically pulled up the drawbridge and told the rest of the world to get lost.
Can we come up and have a look? Of course not! You are English type, sir!
For a while, this rest of the world also included Isle of Man residents who happened to be abroad at the time of the borders closing. While certainly not a popular move, most people understood that it was necessary to protect the island. Just closing the borders wasn't enough, however, as cases of corona had already reached the island and needed to be contained. As a result, the Isle of Man went into lockdown in a way similar to the one imposed in the UK. People were told to stay at home and to only leave the house to shop for necessities or to exercise for brief periods of time. All non-essential shops were closed and social distancing measures were introduced. For a while, shopping here was as weird and unpleasant an experience as it still is in many parts of the world right now. Big queues formed outside of supermarkets and restrictions were being put in place on how much of certain essential items one could buy. Anyone who had recently arrived on the island was required to self-isolate for 14 days, a rule that is still in force right now. Not doing so meant risking arrest, fines and even prison. By and large, however, the local population pulled together and stuck to the rules. Because the island is relatively small, it still enjoys a real sense of community and a shared feeling of responsibility towards each other. The first corona-related death occurred on the 1st of April, and the coming days saw more cases of the virus being reported on island. The island's most famous event, the TT, was also cancelled. For most of April, everyone simply stayed at home. Pubs and restaurants remained shut, and only residents as well as selected key workers were allowed to travel to the island. All had to self-isolate for 14 days on arrival or work under strict rules. Acting swiftly and shutting down the borders as well as public life started to pay dividends pretty quickly, and at the end of April, certain professions were already allowed to get back to work. During May, more restrictions were lifted and non-essential shops were allowed to open again. On the 3rd of June, it was announced that there were no active cases on the island. The Isle of Man had flattened the curve until it could be flattened no more. On the 15th of June, restrictions on social distancing were lifted and restaurants, pubs and cafes were allowed to reopen. Life had returned back to an almost pre-COVID normal. The island didn't escape the virus completely, and in total we had 369 confirmed cases at the time this video was being recorded. of which 25 unfortunately ended fatal. The Isle of Man still has active cases, but none of them are within the community. All of them are individuals who are already self-isolating and therefore pose no risk to the public. The borders remain partially closed and strict self-isolation rules for the few people who are allowed to travel here remain in place. Breaches of these rules often result in arrests and even jail terms. Because the border was closed quickly and strict rules were put in place to contain the virus, residents of the Isle of Man can now enjoy a lifestyle that is but a distant memory to people in many other countries. The island made headline news around the world the other day when thousands of people gathered in Douglas to watch the Christmas lights being switched on. This was the only event of its type in Britain. Currently there are no plans to lift border restrictions and the island essentially lives in a COVID-free bubble. The economy has been restarted and on the face of it the new normal looks very much like the old one. There is some uncertainty on what the future will bring, but for now the Isle of Man has proven that COVID can be contained if swift and decisive measures are being taken and the community comes together. Hopefully very soon the vaccine will eradicate corona and all of this will become nothing but a story we can tell our grandchildren one day. I hope you enjoyed this short look at Corona on the Isle of Man, and if you like my content please feel free to subscribe and also check out my new motoring site for the Isle of Man called frankdrives.com. Thank you for watching.